Barnard College is the preeminent women's college in the country, and we're dedicated to celebrating women's excellence in all its forms. I'm Sion Bylock, the president of Barnard. On behalf of the entire Barnard community, I'm so proud to welcome you to the 11th Annual Athena Film Festival, a true celebration of women and leadership. The spirit of the festival reflects Barnard's legacy of supporting women and giving them the academic and community resources they need to become leaders in all fields and industries. Alums who have dared to make their mark on the world like activists Grace Lee Boggs, Shirley Adelson Siegel, and Connie Hess-Williams. Storytellers like Zora Neale Hurston, Anna Quinlan, and Greta Gerwig, and scientists such as Margaret Mead, Helen Rainey, and Jackie Barton. Today, we continue to support our current students as they prepare to emerge as the next generation of courageous and audacious leaders. Barnard is so proud to be the home of the Athena Film Festival, so sit back and enjoy the show. Barnard College and the Athena Film Festival are here to amplify and celebrate these awesome stories.
Hello, honeys!
Hello, thank you all for tuning in. My name is Farida Badamosi. I am the programmer for the Athena Film Festival, and I'm so excited to be here with the director and producer, Ashley O'Shea, of the film Unapologetic. I just want to say that this program is sponsored by Netflix, and this is our second Breakthrough Award recipient. I'm very excited. I love this film. So I'm ready to jump into the questions. I'm sorry, I'm a little awkward sometimes, but yes, I'm ready to jump into Q&A. I love it. It's all good. It's going to be a very relaxed conversation, as you can probably tell. But thank you so much, Ashley, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I kind of just want to jump into the meat of the film. The subjects were absolutely amazing. So how did you find the subjects of the film? And also in documentary, trust is so important. So how did you earn trust with the community and also with both of these activists in the process of making the film?
Yeah, so I first came into contact with Janae as I was coming up, like I was in the beginning stages of what this film would even be. At the time, she was a leader in the Chicago chapter of Black Youth Project 100, but she was also entering her first semester in her PhD program. And so, there had just been a lot of talk in the community about this organization in particular. So I was just seeing them a lot out in the community doing different actions and protests. And so as I started to ideate about a film that would like center the experiences of young Black queer women, I reached out to Janae just like very, very coldly, like sent an email. And at the time, I was conceptualizing something that I thought was only going to be a 15 to 20 minute piece. So she was very willing at that point to open up her life to me, especially since she was starting on another new journey in her life. And I was just really curious how she was going to go about balancing her life in academia with the work that she was doing, the grassroots work that she was doing in the community. And so, yeah, I think with her, it was a somewhat easier trust fall than Bella. Rightfully so for both of them. But I think, she often talks about a lot of media kind of surrounding the young Black activists in the city around that time. And the fact that I was like a young Black woman who was very, just honest and transparent about what I was trying to do, that she wanted to help me elevate my work as well. And I was newly graduated. I was 22, so I was really trying to just like find my footing, like as a professional filmmaker. Um, and then with Bella, I met her at a celebration after the police superintendent resigned, as you see in the film. And that was around the time that everything was starting to like kind of snowball into something that was like no longer a short film, because the Laquan McDonald tape had come out. There had been some stuff happening around the Rakia Boyd case. And so I just felt like it was a very like important moment in Chicago's history that was about to happen. So I had started to kind of look for other women to include in the piece. And, I was at that board hearing and Bella performs. And, it was just so electrifying and memorable, that I reached out to her and, just did an initial interview, but found out so much about, her family and her history in Chicago, from that interview. Um, and so that became a much slower tread of trust, to get Bella to open up. Her and her family are very protective of their stories, rightfully so. And I didn't want to approach it in an extractive sense. So, yeah, it wasn't too dissimilar from Janae in that I really tried to be as honest and transparent as possible, and telling them like this is my first time going through this too. So like I may tell you one thing and then it ends up being another. Um, but Bella, I recently found out, she said that she could really feel my just like kind of genuine approach to her. And then also, I guess at some point, her mother told her that she should be okay trusting me with her story. And her mother's a very protective woman as well. But as Bella said, she's a really good judge of character. So, I think once that happened, like 4 years in the game, she she let down some walls, and I'm really glad that we were able to make the connection.
Great.
That was a really long answer.
No, it's great. I mean, to be honest, I expected a long answer.
Okay, great. I was like, she asked me 2 questions and I'm still talking, but we're just gonna.
No. It was great. I figured because it is a lot of work in building those relationships and figuring out how to make that happen. And sometimes it like viewers don't realize that that's the work. People don't just naturally let you into the innermost aspects of your life. It takes time.
Right.
So it's really good to hear about that process. And then, what are some of the challenges you faced when you were shooting? Like, what were some of the concerns? I mean, community trust, of course, but like, what were other things that were hard to navigate?
Yeah, I mean, I think that while it benefited me in being 22 and having a lot of energy and excitement for anything, no matter how hard it might make my life financially. On the flip side of that, it was like I went a good year and a half doing most of everything on my own, doing the shooting, the directing, the producing. And it just became, unsustainable once I realized that I wanted to make this a feature length film. So that initial sort of year and a half after that, I started to seek out possible collaborators to help me expand, everything I was trying to do with the film. And we also hadn't, I hadn't really been paying for stuff. I had kind of been like borrowing and stealing things. But I knew if I wanted to like take it to the next level and like, have a demo and fundraise more for the film, that I would need to pay an editor and maybe like a part-time producer. So that's when we ran a crowdfunding campaign, and that was like our first money in. And really throughout the process, it was just a struggle because we would kind of be on again, off again, because we would get these like micro grants for like 10 or 15K. And, you know, we really just needed like that big financial backing so that we could work on the film full time for a little bit at least. And so that was really a struggle until 2019 when we got major funding from the Ford Foundation. And, you know, I think there's a lot behind that. I think the fact that I was a first time filmmaker could have influenced it, that I was a black woman first time filmmaker, making a film about not just like the spectacle of the movement, but about like these intimate moments that happen behind the scenes, I guess. So I think it just took a while for funders to trust that. And, you know, once we had like an assembly early rough cut of the film, and they could see like, oh, this has a beginning to an end. That was when we started to see a shift. But yeah, it was just a very scrappy operation. But I think that it was good in a lot of ways because I got to work with other emerging filmmakers, and a lot of us were just like building each other up throughout the process. In the same way that, you know, as you see in the film, these young people are building a movement. So it felt like a lot of the growth was happening both in front of and behind the camera.
That sounds. The film doesn't. The film. Oh, there's an audience question. Sorry. I'm sorry. Again, I don't know what I'm doing. But like that sounds. The film looks like it was kind of in movement as well, but it looks like well done the entire way through. So like it's good to hear about that.
Oh, thanks.
No, it's.
I'm just very critical of my cinematography.
The film's amazing. Like it really is. It's absolutely stunning.
Thank you.
So it's also like I'll just do a little spiel, but like as a Black woman seeing a film made by Black women for Black women essentially was really great because I feel like there's so many times our stories are being told by other people. And it felt like it was a story being told of them existing in the world or inherently about our trauma. And I felt like this was a film about people existing in a world that heaps trauma on people, but they're doing things within it. And I thought the film was just wonderfully and beautifully done. So like, don't be so critical.
Thank you.
I'm going to do one of the audience questions. So there are so many moments in this film that really stick with you. Was there a moment in shooting that stuck with you the most?
Oh, I answered this earlier on the Instagram takeover I did, but I feel like I should say a different one now. And it's hard because I have two characters, so I never want to seem like I'm whatever. It's fine. I might say two. I'm gonna say two. So one was definitely when I traveled with Janae back home to South Carolina to meet her family. And I don't even know. I mean, I think that it was important because it broke the story open in a way that it hadn't, because, you know, Bella's family was all right there in Chicago, but all the Janae's people were back in South Carolina and New York. So it did break it open in that way to see another dimension of her. But I think also just like the experience of like taking that trip and like staying literally at her mom's house and like meeting her mom and her grandma and the rest of her family. It felt like a big trust shift in the process of making it. And that, you know, I think Janae was like, oh, she's really invested. Like, it's not just like she's just gonna come home and see me like working on my PhD or on a campaign. Like, she wants to know how I got to be this person. And that's just like, for me as a filmmaker, that's really a big reason behind my energy for filmmaking, is like I'm really just interested in people and like trying to figure them out. And like film gives me a non-creepy way of doing that. But yeah, it was just like a wonderful experience and trip. And like even production wise, like the whole story had been only filmed in Chicago at that point. So just for me, like being a young filmmaker, I'm like, you know, I can find the money and like figure the things out so that I can fly other places and film things. It just felt like, you know, I was really like using my resources wisely. But also the scenes in itself, like, you know, her mom opening up about her sexuality and the photos that they look at are really powerful as well. And then, yeah, I would just also say that the scene of us going to visit Bella's brother in prison, was another one that I think is powerful on screen, was like even more powerful experiencing in person. Her brother is in a prison that's 4 hours away from Chicago. So that was like an 8-hour round trip that we took with them that day. And just seeing the literal process of like moving out of the city into like the boonies, essentially, where like they're literally like trying to push people out of the main frame of society. And seeing, how they connected on that trip, and then them going into the prison, and like I had a realization. I had set this whole production schedule, and then it was like I wrote like in an hour or something for them to visit, and they were like, I didn't say this to them, but I realized at some point like, oh, they're gonna stay until these people kick them out because they want to like maximize as much time as possible with her brother. And so that's kind of when we went around and got all those like artistic shots, and then we just like sat, me and my producer Morgan Elise Johnson, just like sat in a subway for like 3 hours, but they had Wi-Fi. But yeah, them then coming out, and then like both very emotional. We didn't put that part in the film, but I don't think it needed it. But they were just very emotional, and like you could tell it's just like a lot for the family to take in. So it was just like a realization for me that like every like criticism that people have of a movement or of somebody's stance on something like is short-sighted if you're not considering like the person that is behind that. Like people have all these criticisms of abolishing prisons or decreasing prison populations, but it's like when you see the effect that it really has on a family, it's like, yes, they may have made a mistake, but does that give you the right to like put them away behind bars for the rest of their lives when they could have shift and change and become whatever you thought they should be for society or what they need to be themselves? So yeah, that was the last thing that we filmed in at the end of 2019, and I think it was a great landing point. So
my next question kind of like expands upon that a little bit. Were there moments that you had to cut from the film? Because when you make a film, you have to edit it. Were there any moments that you wanted to keep, but it just didn't fit in the film?
Yes, there were a lot. There were a lot, and it was even harder because I shot maybe like 75% of the film. So, I was even more attached to the footage because I felt like I had like been there and experienced it, and like I remember it a certain way, but then my editor Ruben Daniels would be like, that's not how it looks in the edit. So one thing that we had to cut, it's actually not even with Janae and Bella. It's like this archival footage of this buying club in New Jersey, which is like a fancy word for like mutual aid. And, we were trying to visualize this theme of like masculinity in the movement and how it can or cannot be harmful and how sexism can manifest itself. And so I was really just trying to like hit the audience over the head with it and show that this was not just something that exists in 2020. This is something that existed like when the civil rights movement was happening, when the Black Power movement was happening. And so we just found this really dope, like public, like I think it was like a public access documentary. And it's literally this man like coming in and like basically telling this group of women that all the work that they've been doing is not enough. And they just like all snap on him. These are like grown, mostly Black women, who have been literally like helping their community get cheaper groceries and like access to food for months or however long it had been at the time. And so, yeah, it just felt like a manifestation of that kind of theme. But then, that was something that I realized, like going through this process the first time, is like you can have central themes and narrative arcs to the film, but you don't have to like constantly like reiterate it to the audience. Like once you've said it once, you've kind of said it enough. And so, we still have it in there, like as in a different way of like the broader chorus of women talking about how men can be trivial to the movement. And it was like, we already have it. So like, why do we need to keep overdoing this narrative? So that was like one of the last things we cut out because it just wasn't flowing quite as smoothly as we would have liked it.
I'm going to do this question. Okay. So one audience, being so close to these activists and being part of the movement, what do you think we need to do in our communities to start to heal this trauma and seek real justice?
Yeah, I think what has seemed the most impactful in what I've witnessed is just holding space for one another. Um, I think that oftentimes, because we live in such a digital age, and like also because we're now in the middle of a pandemic where we like kind of have to do that, there can be a lot of disconnect in how we talk about what's affecting our community and like the ways in which that we can start to heal that and address that. But you know, this past summer when the uprisings were happening around Breonna Taylor and George Floyd in Chicago, they this organization called Defund CPD came together and was literally just holding like gathering spaces in like parks and outside areas to talk to people about like what police abolition is, like how policing looks in the city of Chicago, and really just allowing people to connect and like, you know, hear ideas that maybe aren't quite exactly how theirs are, but you know, have a lot of education and like have been informed a lot along the way. And so I just think we need to keep holding space like that. You know, that's something we're trying to do with this film, is like use it as a platform for different groups to talk, for intergenerational conversations, so that people across generations can connect about how they've approached moments like this. And I think if we just start there with like this simple act of like talking to one another, I don't mean to sound like kumbaya, but like I think there's just like a lot of new ideas that have been presented in the past year or so. So it's like, if we don't take the time to process them and even decide if this is what we want to do as a community or as a people, like it's going to keep we're going to keep experiencing those tensions and like those cyclical patterns that we're trying to break out of.
Another question from the audience. So you talked about this film being by Black women for Black women. What has been the reaction from Black women? And also, what do you want Black women to take from the film? Especially like when you think about moments like this is the anniversary of Breonna Taylor's death. So like, how do you see Black women responding to you? How have they responded, and what would you like for them to take from it?
My favorite thing is watching the film with Black women because they just like get it. And like for example, my sister had seen the film a lot throughout the years, but like in different stages. And like once we started to get towards the end of it, she was like, I'm just gonna wait till it's like all the way done because I want to experience it like as an audience member. And I just remember watching it with her on the premiere night in Chicago, and like every like emotional cue that like is supposed to have an emotion she hit, like when people like when you're supposed to cry, when you're supposed to laugh. You know, I just think there's so much familiarity in it for people. And like when we were, for Black women, I mean, and when we were editing it, you know, I tried to gravitate towards like what like would make me feel something. So like the scene, even with Janae and her roommate, like when Alexis is doing her makeup and they're just talking about how they met and all these different things. And I was just like, this is literally like a scene out of my life, just like change the people out in the time. And so yeah, I'm just really grateful that, you know, it's garnered that response from Black women, because you know that opinion probably matters more to me than others. And in terms of what I hope Black women take away from it, like I definitely hope it gives them some sense of relief, or just gives them a moment to like breathe and feel seen and not feel like constantly criticized or being asked to behave in certain ways or to save the world in certain ways. And yeah, I just hope that it can definitely just open up the conversation around you know the effects that a movement like this can have on Black women, when our names aren't always the ones being elevated, but we're constantly the ones that are being asked to lead or choose to lead. How people can just like show it better for Black women, because yeah, it's just like we appreciate all of the tenderness and the care and the patience that everyone else receives, and we're not always going to get it right, but we're always going to show up. So I hope it just encourages Black women to keep showing up, but to definitely feel okay if they need to ask people to show up for them as well.
Switching gears a little bit, you are the recipient of the second annual Breakthrough Award. So
Yes,
congratulations. I just wanted to
apparently.
talk a little
Thank
bit about the
you.
award. So how do you feel? How's it going?
I mean, I truly, when I got that email, I was like, what is going on? I mean, it's really special to me. You don't get into it for the awards, and but up until this point, we had only really won one other prize at another festival, and so yeah, it just being recognized, I guess, on that level, really just was affirming for me, and I just thought it was really perfect because with a festival that's so focused on like women leaders, like that's literally what my film is. And so it just feels like it's helping. I hope that it keeps helping to elevate the film to another level, because I think that like Chicago, what's happening in Chicago is like very indicative of like what is happening all around the US. But I want to make sure that people know about that and they feel like they can make that connect. Um, so yeah, and I mean, I really feel like I just fumbled through this whole process. So it's just like great that it turned into something beautiful that other people can connect with. And the award is just kind of like the cherry on top. So yeah, I'm definitely reveling in it and telling everybody that I know. Trying to get some more money for others for future things.
I mean, yes, money. Kind of like kind of sort of related to moments of joy, but like what were moments of joy while you were filming? Like what were like when you in the middle of filming, like what were it's there's lots of interesting topics, like there's lots of different topics and moments in the film, but what were moments of joy in the filming process for you?
Yeah. I think I mean there were a lot. I think every this kind of goes back to the institutional support I was just speaking to. Like I initially was kind of supported by Cartemquin Films in Chicago, like both as an intern and then as one of their Diverse Voices and Docs fellows. And that was really like a moment where I wasn't sure if I was going to be living back in Chicago because I'm from Indianapolis originally. I'm here now in my father's den. But I didn't know like what my trajectory exactly looked like, but kind of getting into those programs and like getting the reaction I was to the short stuff I'd already put together, it made me feel like I could keep going, and then getting further support from organizations across the country. And I was just really young, so it just like once again, I not even necessarily in it for the awards. It's just like being able to be in these rooms with people that have been doing it for years and years. I just felt so grateful that I was able to get that, at the stage that I was in my career. And then definitely when the film premiered, the day after the premiere at Black Star, we had an outdoor community screening with like 100 people. So it was really just like mostly our friends and family. Like we tried to make it a community thing, but then Bella started like reserving tickets, and I was like, well, um, but we did it outside on the south side of Chicago at the Museum of Science and Industry. Had like food trucks and like, just like a little area by the pond. And Bella performed at the end. But yeah, it was just really wonderful to like still be able to celebrate the filming community because like that was something we really felt we were gonna lose because we couldn't have an in-person premiere. So I'm just glad that it was like warm enough and like safe enough that we could hold space like that. Cause it's still, I didn't get to get my perfect red carpet premiere, but like we had a red carpet and we made our own. So that was just wonderful because it just felt like everything that we had manifested. And I hope that we can do some more this summer.
Awesome. I think it's definitely, I mean, I've seen it several times at this point, but it is one of those films that you kind of want to like see in a group with people as well.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, we're going to have so many.
I'm like, definitely hit you up and be like, is there going to be an outdoor screening? Because I'll be there.
Yes. Yes.
So, we're unfortunately starting to run out of time, but I do have another audience question. So what projects are you planning on working on next? So like, what are some projects that you kind of have floating around?
Yeah, I can't say much about either, but well, I can. One of them I can say more about. So I am starting development on two projects. One is kind of like a it's set in Black Indianapolis in the 90s, and it kind of is surrounding one event and like a person within that event. That's what I can say about it now. But
Is that a
I
doc?
feel really connected.
Is that a fiction or a doc again?
It's a documentary. It's a
Okay.
documentary. Yeah. But so yeah, it'll be a little bit more historical. But yeah, I'm really excited because when this event happened, I was like a baby. I was like 2 years old, and like I just feel connected with that piece of it. And then I'm also working on a I guess docu-series about my family patriarch, who's from Tuskegee in Mobile, Alabama, had 17 children, and they all went they all went on to college or the military and kind of were part of this like second wave of the Great Migration. Uh, so yeah, I'm starting that, and then I'm also I'm still freelance DPing. I'm really excited to have a little bit more time. Well, I thought I was gonna have more time, and then these projects came, but it's fine. I'm still doing it when I can, just to keep my skills sharp. And you know, that was cinematography is my first love, so I'm just glad that I'm able to still do it.
And then, because I'm sure everyone who's watching really wants to support you. How can we? Like, what can we do to help you on your journey as a filmmaker?
I mean, if anybody knows any major funders, feel free to hit me up. Yeah, I mean, honestly, most jobs that I get or invitations to films are because of people referring me. So, you know, honestly, just keeping me in mind if you have a need as for DP, or even you are sharing with a friend a need for that. Um, I can be followed at ashley.o'shea on Instagram. And yeah, and even with the Unapologetic, we're trying to, or we are in the process of an impact campaign that right now has been really more so focused in Chicago, and we're trying to expand it nationwide. So if you have a group or organization that you think could be good to see the film or have an event around the film, you can email us at unapologeticdoc@gmail.com. Oh, you could buy some merch. We just, sorry. We're selling merch. If you go to unapologeticfilm.com/merch, we have some great pieces over there. So yeah, any of those avenues, you know, I would love it.
Well, thank you so much again for giving us your amazing
Yes.
film and for doing this Q&A. It really felt like a blessing watching your film. So thank you very much for
Oh,
creating
thank
it.
you. Thank you
And
for watching it and having me.
and thank you everyone who's watching this Q&A. The film is still streaming, so if you haven't seen it yet, or you know someone hasn't seen it, please send them to the Athena website to watch it. And thank you from the Athena Film Festival. Bye.
Bye.